March 9th, 1997. The day they killed Notorious Biggie. Biggie Smalls, also known as Notorious B.I.G, was a renowned hip-hop artist who marked the beginning of a supremacy within East Coast gangsta rap. On his last night, the Notorious B.I.G was leaving a party organized by Byte magazine at the Peterson Automotive Museum. His group of people left the establishment with two GMC Suburban vans after the firefighters cancelled the party due to overcrowding. The lead vehicle where the rapper was located stopped at a red light. At the intersection of Wilshire Boulevard and South Firefox Avenue, less than 50 meters from the party, while they were talking to one of the girls on the sidewalk from the cabin, a black Chevrolet Impala pulled up beside them. Someone rolled down the window and shot at Notorious, who received numerous bullet wounds. He was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where doctors performed emergency surgery to save his life. But after 1 in the morning, his death was announced. Some accused it was revenge, others said the police were to blame, but there was never a clear result. What was known was the series of events that led him to that point in the history of his life and of course also of his death. Today, learn what happened to one of the best rappers in the United States and also in the world. Before we start, I ask you please, if you are interested in this type of content, leave your like below, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and turn on notifications. Because we have a lot of videos here that I don't want you to miss. Now let's get started. Biggie Smalls was born as Christopher George Latorre Wallace on May 21, 1972 in Brooklyn, New York. His parents were originally from the Caribbean island of Jamaica. His mother, Boleta, was a preschool teacher, and when she arrived in New York, she fell in love with George Latorre. Soon she became pregnant, and months later, the future Big Papa was born. At the age of 2, the man of the house left and did not return for a long time. He left his family from one moment to the next. Boleta then could not give up and dedicated herself to working in 2 places in order to send her son to a good school. During the summers, he and his mother would travel to their native Jamaica. This meant an intense musical heritage, which from a very young age he absorbed without realizing that this would lay the foundations for a short but intense path in his career. Every so often, the father, George Latorre, would show up at the house to leave some dollars, but he never thought about his son. He only did it to try to win back his ex-wife. For this and other reasons, the little gangster was very afraid of this person. These subtle details of Notorious's life can be seen in the movie of the same name, released in the year 2009. With Jamal Gular in the role of the rapper, Wallace studied at the Westinghouse Institute in downtown Brooklyn and shared a desk with those who would become big stars, like Sean Corey Carter, who everyone knows by the alias of Jay Seed, who today is considered the richest rapper in the world, with a fortune exceeding $1 billion. But he wasn't the only one, as he spent all those years of exams and recesses in high school, full of grass shared with Booster Rhymes. However, while he excelled in English, he also did so to pave the way to classes, without his mother knowing where he was going. Friendships accompanied him through his journey on the streets. The asphalt of experience transformed into a new school, and the teachings, yes or yes. They passed through Fulton Street, where the first 2 things he learned were the hard life of being black and the good business that came from selling drugs on the corners. This last one brought a literal added value, as it took him from having nothing to being one of the wealthiest in his group of friends. From the age of 10, while the evening dew dampened his clothes, he began to deal with the people of the night. The deals ranged from the calloused hands of a crack addict to the palm of a big kid who seemed more adult because of his great height. The bills crumpled in Biggie's pockets, and the sparkle in his eyes became increasingly intense. It was during this time that he got his first childhood nickname, Big, due to his large size. After leaving school at 12 years old and fully dedicating himself to dirty business, he received his first police sentence, being arrested for possession of weapons. The following year, he ran into trouble with the law again for violating his probation. A year later, he was accused of cocaine trafficking in North Carolina, and according to investigations, he spent 9 months in jail while waiting for bail. Going back a few years, Biggie also started rapping for his neighbors. Upon regaining his freedom and with several months of training in the bars, he recorded a demo tape as Biggie Smalls, a name he took from the gang leader in the 1975 movie Let's Do It Again. At that time, he didn't think of music as something serious. In an interview, he said, "It was fun just to hear myself on tape over beats." That recording traveled further than he thought and reached the Source magazine. Upon hearing it, they were struck by everything he had to tell, and they put together a column talking about his music in the unsigned hype section. In March of 1992, after that kickstart, from there Biggie Smalls was invited to record with other rappers. That recording caught the attention of Gene Puffy Combs, better known as Puff Daddy, an R&B executive and producer from a leading label. Puffy arranged a record deal for Biggie when he created his own label called Bad Boy Records. By the middle of 1992, Biggie had joined him. Before starting to record with the new label, some tracks that the future king of the East Coast had recorded with a brief stint at Uptown label came out, including a remix of Real Love by Mary J. Blige in August of 1992. Just as he mentioned that the name Biggie Smalls was taken from the movie Let's Do It Again. It was also because of this same film that he had to change it, as he was sued for using a copyrighted name. So the rapper changed his name to Notorious Biggie, but what not many people know is that his first pseudonym was Master of Ceremonies Quest. Finally, in June of 1993, Bad Boy Records released the Notorious Biggie's first single. As a solo artist, Party and Bullshit, music and friendship were always linked. And so, while Notorious was recording tracks for his debut album, he met the rapper Tupac. As detailed by writer Ben Wushoff in his book Original Gangsters, that fraternal union took place at a party thrown by a Los Angeles drug dealer. They filled their bellies with food, their lungs with marijuana smoke, and even got a small showcase of a private gun collection. At that time, Tupac was already a successful artist on the scene, and he gifted Biggie a bottle of cognac, Gene C. Seeing the abilities he had, Big Tupac became his mentor. Even at that time, Notorious asked Tupac if he would be interested in becoming his manager, and he said no. Better stick with Puffy, he's going to make you a star. At that time, the rising rapper was worried about money as he had become a father to his daughter Tiana. Out of necessity, he chose to return to what had always given him quick money, drug trafficking. But as a good manager, Puff Daddy found out what he was doing and made him stop to take his music career seriously. In September of 1994, the Notorious Biggie's debut album was born under the wing of Bad Boy. In that album, Ready to Die received gold in less than 2 months, double platinum the following year, and finally quadruple platinum. The renowned song Big Poppa, the second of the 4 singles from the album, was nominated for a Grammy for Best Solo Rap Performance. Ready to Die marked the rebirth of East Coast hip-hop. Thanks to this, Notorious was applauded for his flow within the bars and narrative. With lyrics that seemed like stories, he showed part of his autobiographical history, his capricious youth. In Suicidal Socks, the last song of the album, you could understand the cry for help within its lyrics. In Street Life, you're not allowed to clearly show if you really care about something, Puff Daddy said to the New York Times. And he added, you have to keep a straight face. The other side of that is this album. He is giving up all his vulnerability. During that intense period, exactly on August 4th of 1994, Biggie married R&B singer Faith Evans, his partner within Bad Boy. They got married a few days after meeting at a photo shoot. Evans appeared in One More Chance, the fourth single from Ready to Die, which reached number 2 on the Billboard chart and also became platinum. Then, on October 29, 1996, they had their son, Christopher Z. J. Wallace Jr. But we can't get too far ahead in the story without mentioning an event that marked a before and after in her relationship with Tupac. If you saw the report we prepared about Tupac's death, you're going to know some extra details about this part of the story. If you haven't seen it yet, I invite you to watch it because it's uploaded on this channel. It's called, as I told you, The Day Tupac Died. As I was saying, the most significant date during Biggie's rise was November 29, 1994. Tupac had been invited to record a feature with Ron G in New York. Upon entering the studio, he saw Notorious and Puffy upstairs, but he never thought that death would touch him there. While he was recording, he was interrupted several times by the music representative, James Jimmy Henchman, Rosemond, who allegedly offered him $7,000 to travel to Quad Studios in Times Square that same night. Theoretically, the rush was because they needed the rapper to get involved in another participation. The need for money to offset his legal cost for various issues. Those who are going to find out if they watch the video dedicated to Tupac forced him to accept this deal. Once in the studio, a knock was heard at the front door and 3 men forcibly entered. Seconds later, they fired, hitting 4 shots. Some say there were 5 in Tupac's body, and then they escaped. As best he could, the singer crawled and entered the elevator to ask for help from who was his friend and companion. He pressed the button to go up, and on the first floor, when the doors opened, Notorious and Puff Daddy were staring at him. According to Tupac's testimony sometime later, it wasn't a look of surprise, but of contempt. It was at that moment that he assumed he had survived a trap. Another detail that muddied this story and shook Tupac's confidence was the B-side of the theme. Big Papa, released just over 2 months before the incident, featured the song Who Shot Ya, which translated would be something like Who Shot You. Tupac interpreted that title as if Biggie was mocking him, and thus a battle within the music was born, which would later explode in the streets. Tupac then released the incredible song Hit 'Em Up, where you can hear some of this. Claims to be a womanizer, but I gave it to your wife. Will we attack bad boys? These guys are screwed for life. He even literally named them when he said Biggie Smalls and Junior Mafia are easy bitches to beat. Having claimed to have been with Biggie's wife, she would also speak later in 2014 about this situation and even claimed that Tupac had hit her. After recording a song together, Biggie was growing among the other singers and the podiums were overlapping with his songs. People who wanted to collaborate with him were lining up, but there was someone who could enter through the very important person door, and it was precisely Michael Jackson. But with him would come new legal problems. The 29th of August 1995 was the date of the next album of the rapper, this time with Junior Mafia. But where had the Mafia group come from? The purpose was to form a group to instruct rising rappers, among them Lil' Kim, with whom he had a love affair. A small story within her career was that she had a ghostwriter behind the successful single Queen Beach. The one who wrote her reference track, as it is often said, behind the instruments was none other than Biggie. Apparently, this was not the only one, and Biggie wrote several songs that he later successfully launched to Lil' Kim in the years they were together. In 1995, Notorious. He had the opportunity then, as I said, to collaborate with the king of pop, Michael Jackson, on the song This Time Around. Within that story, there was another one like a little matryoshka of fame and problems. The story went that Biggie was with Little Sis, who, at just 16 years old, was one of his rappers from Junior Mafia. This was the person who was present at the moment when the proposal from the king of pop to go to the studio arrived. But according to Little Sis, who was eager to meet Jackson, he got a flat refusal from his superior, who literally told him, "I don't trust Michael Jackson." Joining with the kids, Biggie had that particularity. He could see beyond people. However, Biggie not only recorded the song this time around with Michael Jackson in 1995, but he would get together again 6 years later for the recording of Jackson's 10th album, Invincible. By the end of 1995, the Notorious B.I.G was the best-selling male solo artist on the Billboard charts, not only in hip-hop but also in pop and R&B. Biggie continued working on his second studio album in September and continued into 1996. New year, new life, new problems. In March of 1996, he was arrested after chasing two autograph-seeking fans. He stopped near the taxi they were traveling in and broke all the windows with a baseball bat. He also threatened to kill them. Action and reaction. For this, he was sentenced to 100 hours of community service. Months after this problem, the police raided his house in New Jersey and found 50 grams of marijuana in addition to 4 automatic weapons. Before the summer ended, he was accused of assaulting and robbing a person who was part of a concert promoter at a nightclub in New Jersey. In the fall, he was arrested again for smoking marijuana in his car in Brooklyn. Clearly, these were different times. The 7th of September 1996. The time came when the rift between the East Coast and the West Coast became larger. Would hip-hop say goodbye to a great artist? Tupac Shakur was murdered in Las Vegas. A Cadillac pulled up next to the vehicle where Tupac and his friend Nike were, who was looking the other way, because a group of girls had started flirting with them from another car. From the Cadillac, seconds later they fired 4 times at the side of the vehicle where the rapper was, who received the bullet impacts. 1 in the arm, 1 in the thigh, and 2 in the chest. The most critical part was that one of the bullets entered his right lung. Some fragments hit Knight. The car drove off and no one ever knew who was responsible for the shots. But of course there are many theories, and I invite you again to watch the Tupac video because there we analyze each one of them. No one had been accused of the murder, but as a result of the East versus West war, it put Biggie in everyone's sight. In fact, that rivalry had even driven Tupac to publicly blame Biggie and Puffy for his shooting. From 1994, that we previously mentioned, where many believed that they were behind the possible murder of Tupac. In response to that accusation, Biggie and Puffy denied their involvement almost instantly, and from that moment they became prime suspects. It's kind of funny. I realized how powerful Tupac and I are. Biggie reflected in an interview after the death of his great rival. We are 2 individual people, we waged a coastal war. You know what I'm saying? One man against a man made the whole West Coast hate the East Coast and vice versa. Of course, and that really annoys me. He didn't like it, so his whole coast didn't like me, I didn't like him, so my coast didn't like him either. That let me know how much strength I had. I'm trying to do everything, now I have to be the one to try and turn all this around. I must take power as myself because Tupac can't be the one to try and crush it because he's now gone. I have to carry the weight of both sides. But the words of taking power, all the promises he was making to unite both coasts as their only leader, remained just that. In simple words, all the power he thought he was going to take was snatched away from him in the same way as his enemy. Biggie didn't live long enough to see the peace and power he desired. On March 9, 1997, Notorious B.I.G was cold-bloodedly murdered. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the incident occurred shortly after he left a Vibe magazine party. After the shots, his bodyguard took him to the hospital, but it was already too late. An interesting point to note is that the musician was not supposed to be in Los Angeles on the night of his death, but was supposed to have boarded a plane to London. But that night, he wanted to celebrate the release of his new album. What would have happened if he had just gotten on the plane he was supposed to take? We don't know. They were friends with Tupac, they shared life and also death. Both died in the same way and also shared the outcome of the murders, as none were solved. As a colorful fact, Biggie had recorded an album that was released posthumously just 15 days after his death on March 25, 1997. Bad Boy released Life After Dead. The album went diamond after selling over 10 million copies. With his murder seen by many hip-hop fans as an eye for an eye killing, Biggie seemed to continue the war even from the grave with the song Long Kiss Goodnight. In its lyrics, it referred to the moment when Tupac was shot and survived. But others say that this track was recorded before Tupac's actual murder because he knew what was going to happen. But beyond all controversy, the deaths of both Tupac and Biggie marked the end of the war between the East Coast and the West Coast. On March 18, 1997, Biggie's memorial service was held at the Frank A. Campbell Funeral Chapel in Manhattan. 350 guests witnessed the cremation of his remains. As time passed, rivalries cooled and assumptions began to resurface. Greg Cadden was the investigator involved in the rapper's deaths. This retired cop alleged that it was Zoog Knight, the leader of Dead Row Records, who had organized the murder in revenge for what happened to Tupac. In 2006, it was determined that it was Nike who hired Wardell Pucci Foos, a member of the Piru Gangsters, to shoot at Biggie. But as if it were a chapter of Sons of Anarchy, he would have died in July 2003 when he was shot in the back while riding his motorcycle. Beyond all the hypotheses, the investigation to this day remains inconclusive because there are no clues and the possible murderer would have died. So there is also no statement. Another tragic day that embraces an unresolved case with hundreds of data, complaints, and trials. That given how this particular case is being handled, it seems like the expected result will never come. All we have left is to listen to the music that Biggie left us and enjoy it. And that's it for today's video. I hope you found the Notorious B.I.G's story interesting. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. If you haven't done so yet, I also invite you to leave a comment below with suggestions for possible future videos. In addition to that, I'm leaving a couple of videos here for you to continue your marathon. My name is Magnum Mephisto, and this was The Day That.